is president and founder of NDN and a former Clinton campaign advisor. Mark Thiessen is a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and former speechwriter for President Bush. Good to see you both.
Good to be here.
Hi, Shannon. How are you?
I am very good. Simon, I'll start with you. Sure. Is it just something traditionally we see in a second term, or does the president need to get serious about turning these numbers around?
I think he needs to get serious about turning these numbers around. I mean, I don't think the White House is happy about this. I think they saw some inkling of this back in the summer, back in July, which is one of the reasons he started talking about the economy more. But I think, look, if the economy continues to do well, if the ACA rollout is successful, if things in the Middle East get better, and if the Republicans continue to act as sort of nutty as they have in the last couple of weeks, I think there's a scenario where you could see things getting much better in the next few months. But it's going to require him to govern well and for things to break his way, certainly.
All right, Mark, the Republicans have been acting, quote-unquote, nutty, maybe because of the polls that they're seeing, that approval or any kind of appreciation of the health care law is definitely going down. Our most recent Fox News polls mirrors, most others that are out there right now, showing that, when you're asked, what's your opinion of Obamacare, unfavorable now at 60%, favorable at 34%. Yep. That's a hard ship to right if you're going to turn around public perception.
No, that's absolutely right, and Simon just gave you a very sober assessment of the president's situation. I think these numbers are great news for Republicans, so long as they don't blow it by doing something stupid like shutting down the government, which they've been talking about doing. You cited the numbers. I mean, in foreign policy, only 40% approval. Economy, 41% approval, and as you said on Obamacare, I think you said 32% approval. I mean, that's after years of their trying to sell this thing to the American people, and Americans aren't buying. So Republicans are in a really strong position, if they've handled this right, to use the popular discontent over Obamacare to win the midterm elections in 2014, to strengthen their control of the House and even take back the Senate. But that's as long as they don't blow it. And what you see is, for example, that while a majority of Americans oppose Obamacare, only 27% of Americans want to shut down the government over it. So all this talk of shutting down the government is actually alienating the very people, the independents and others, who Republicans need in order to keep the House and take back the Senate, so they have the political power to actually stop Obamacare.
Yeah, for a lot of folks out there, it does boil down to who cares about me. Is it the Republicans? Is it the president? The approval ratings for Congress across the board, not really good the last several years. I want to look at another poll about President Obama. Do you think he cares about people like you? That was the polling question. Only 30% of people out there think, yeah, he cares a lot about me. Simon, he's always had really good personal polling, even when folks didn't go with him on the issues. That can't be a number the White House is going to like either.
Yeah, and I think keep in mind that this poll comes right after the struggle that he had to manage the Syria effort domestically and abroad, which I don't think went particularly well for him. And I think it reinforced this notion that his interests were in places other than in the struggle of everyday people. And so I think you're going to see the administration spend a lot of time, as they're doing now, talking about the economy, talking about health care, talking about immigration reform, sort of the domestic agenda, to reconnect with the American people and show that that's really his main priority. I think some of this is he's getting a little punished for spending too much time on Syria in the last couple of weeks, and for not going particularly well.
All right, so let's talk about that, because we have Syria in this polling as well, and some other notes. Let's start with the president's job approval ratings on specific issues. Let's talk on economy. It's 41% approved, 54% disapprove. 54% say he's not getting it right on the economy. When you look at Syria, he's down by 15 points there, and Iran, he's down by 5 points. So both domestically and internationally, Mark, right now, folks don't feel like they're very inspired. They don't have confidence in what he's doing.
Yeah, not at all. And what Simon's recommending is that the president do his umpteenth pivot to jobs. I mean, how many times have we heard the pivot to jobs? It's becoming almost comical right now, of course. And he even announced the pivot to jobs before he had the deal with Russia on Syria. I think what you're seeing is not that he spent too much time on Syria, is that he absolutely bungled Syria. This was an absolute debacle of an embarrassment of American leadership on the world stage. And so, yeah, he's getting punished for that. He's also getting punished because the economy, 5 years into his presidency, is still a disaster. Again, this is great news for Republicans, but, you know, Republicans tend to be their own worst enemies. And we're being our own worst enemy right now because we're picking this fight and spending all this time talking about shutting down the government, which makes the Republicans seem like, you know, when people are upset with Obama, unhappy with the leadership of congressional Democrats, we're not presenting a alternative that they find palatable. So we have to do so, we have to go and present we have to have a strategy that's a little bit smarter. In fact, what we ought to do is do what President Putin did in cornering Obama in the negotiations. You take it off of the government shutdown, the fight over Obamacare, where we have no leverage, and put it on the place where the president is cornered, which is on the debt limit, where he has to compromise, and then you offer him a face-saving solution. You say, let's delay Obamacare for a year and then take it to the American people. And he's going to have a very hard time turning that down. But instead, all this talk of a government shutdown is making Republicans look like the unreasonable ones.
Yeah, and against that, you mentioned the issue of the debt ceiling, which we talked about with Chris Starwild as well. I mean, that's only a couple of weeks away, yeah. And there was some polling on that as well. More than half of the folks who were polled here said that they actually wanted to see that if there was going to be an increase in the debt ceiling, which there's going to have to be if we continue to pay our bills, that they wanted that tied specifically to spending cuts. But then when you pushed into the issue of default, only 7 in 10 said they actually prefer doing something they don't agree with, do a debt ceiling deal. It doesn't have to be perfect. They'd rather have that than shutting down the government. So, Simon, I mean, that's good news for Democrats when it comes to something that the president said he will not negotiate on, the debt ceiling.
Yeah, look, the truth is the debt ceilings, messing around with the debt ceiling is much more dangerous for the United States than shutting down the government for a couple days. And the Republicans were unsuccessful in the last few days in getting the Democrats to compromise on shutting down the government. They're certainly not going to get the Democrats to compromise on the debt ceiling. And I think that, you know, I think Democrats feel like, well, Mark, we'll see. Let's come on in the next few weeks and see how we do here. But I think that this new agenda pushed forward by Boehner and his team this morning, where they sort of put a kitchen sink set of Republican agenda items, all of which don't poll well in the public, all of which were rejected by the Senate, and none of which, by the way, solve the core problem, which is about the budget. We got to get a budget. We got to resolve the budget. This looks, I think, very political, and I think it's a huge mistake by the Republicans. But we'll see.
But the difference
we got to leave it there. I'm sorry, Simon and Mark. Thank you both very much, and maybe we will have you back to talk about it when we get to October 17th. That's supposedly the deadline. Thank you both.